Hi, everyone. Now, where do I begin? I've been with my fiance for 5 4s, and we've been living together for 2 years in a house we bought together. We were supposed to marry in 2 months, but recently we faced a situation involving her parents that changed everything. It all started when my fiance and her mom went to looking at her wedding dress. While they were in the car, her mom kept asking questions about our wedding budget, how much we were spending on the makeup artist, the dress, the photographer, the restaurant, and so on. My fiance gave her all the details, which seemed fine at first, but then her mom didn't take it well when she found out we were spending $15,000 on our wedding. Keep in mind, we didn't ask them for any sort of financial support or big gifts for the wedding. That night, her mom spoke to her dad about how unhappy she was with our budget. He then asked my fiance to call me over to talk about it. When I got her call, I was not happy to hear that her parents wanted to meddle in our finances, but I tried to be respectful of them as my future in-laws, so I agreed to meet. When I arrived at her parents' house after work, they immediately started criticizing the wedding plans. They said I was being wasteful for spending so much on a good photographer and that we had too many guests invited. They suggested we only invite family. They also brought up how my fiance was covering 60% of the wedding costs and said that it should be split evenly, which didn't sit well with me. I calmly listened, even though I was angry inside because it felt like they had no right to say these things. Once they were finished talking, I responded, telling them that I understood they were concerned for their daughter and our financial well-being, but this was a budget that my fiance and I had discussed and agreed upon. We weren't asking for any financial backing or gifts from them. We simply wanted them to be a part of our special day without worrying about it. I told them that if my fiance wasn't happy with our agreement, we would make changes, but ultimately this was our decision to make together, and it wasn't up to them. I then explained that the reason my fiance was paying 60% of the wedding budget was because I was covering the mortgage and maintenance costs for our house, so I couldn't contribute as much to the wedding. Meanwhile, her role in our relationship was to manage most of the household expenses, which allowed her to save more. I made sure they understood that, since we already lived together and shared everything except a joint bank account, any wedding gifts, whether cash or items, belonged to both of us. So it didn't matter who paid more or less. It was something we had discussed and agreed upon, and I felt like they were being overbearing by trying to control it. I added that this was our wedding, and they needed to understand that we were in charge of our own decisions, not them. Unfortunately, they didn't take it well. They started angrily bashing my family, claiming I was being irresponsible for spending so much, and also accusing me of neglecting my 86-year-old father by spending so much on a wedding. I calmly let them finish and then told them that they couldn't bring my family into this. We weren't asking either side of the family for financial support, and it wasn't right for them to try to control our finances like this. I also felt that they were being too possessive of my fiancée and her money. During all of this, my fiancée just sat there silently, which really disappointed me. I thought she would have defended our decision, or at least spoken up for us, since her parents had no right to interfere in our business. To make matters worse, they didn't want her to have a joint bank account with me. They insisted that she should have full control over her own finances, which I agreed with to some extent. However, the joint account was only meant for shared household expenses. It wasn't about controlling her money. It was about managing things as a couple. At this point, I told them that if they weren't happy with the budget, my fiance and I would review it together and make adjustments if necessary. But the demands didn't stop. They weren't making suggestions anymore. They were telling us what we should do. It was no longer about offering advice. It was about trying to dictate everything. We went home and went over the budget again, and my fiance made some changes. Then she turned to me and asked, "Do you know what my parents were trying to get through to you?" I said, "No, not really. They have no right to interfere. It's our wedding, and we should be the ones making the decisions." I explained that in the future, if we had any issues or big decisions to make, they should be discussed privately in our household, and not with her parents. She looked at me in disgust and said she didn't care what I thought, and that she would continue sharing things with her parents. She had no intention of keeping things private. At that point, I lost it. I told her that if that was how things were going to go, I couldn't imagine building a family with her if she was so okay with her parents running her life. I wasn't saying she couldn't talk to her parents, but there had to be boundaries. There were things that should remain between us as a couple, and for her to let her parents intervene so freely wasn't acceptable. The next day, I called off the wedding. I ended our relationship 2 days later. Of course, she begged me to reconsider, but it was something I just couldn't live with anymore. I couldn't imagine being suffocated by her parents and having them control every aspect of our lives. It broke my heart, but I had to make this decision. I put so much effort into this relationship, trying to build a good foundation for the future, but this wasn't going to work. I feel hurt because I thought having a partner's support was key to making a relationship work, but I felt alone, as if I was the only one trying to fight for the family we were supposed to be building. I've always considered myself a centered man, raised with good values. I don't have any issues with gambling or alcohol. I was raised to know what a partner's role is in a family, and I live by that. But the fact that my fiancé wasn't supporting me in this made me realize I couldn't continue. During my time off, my ex and I did not talk at all for almost 2 weeks. Then she called and asked if we could go somewhere and talk. I agreed. She started out the conversation by apologizing to me for how inconsiderate she was of the whole situation I was put in. As for my reasoning and actions, she didn't get why I had taken things so seriously with what her parents said. For her, it was normal and something she's grown accustomed to her entire life, so she could not see things from my perspective until given some time to think and process it. She knows that I was just trying to set boundaries and that her parents have crossed the line, which is something no one who's been in her life had ever done before. Then we talked about the pros and cons of our relationship, and she cried, saying she still wants us to be together and wants to work things out. After letting her finish, I explained to her that I had no intention of being disrespectful to her parents, since I know how much she loves her family. I went on about how we'll handle future situations. For example, I asked if this sort of thing happens in the future, how would she handle it? She says that if her parents want to get involved, then she'll listen to what they have to say and talk to me about it afterward. She reassured me that she wouldn't put me in the same situation she put me in before. She agreed that we should be making our own decisions. She can share whatever it is with her parents and listen to their opinions, but the final decision will be up to us. And she does agree that there are things that are kept private and should not be discussed with her parents. It's uncharted territory for her, but it's something she understands now, as it's obviously caused problems for us. I was thinking to myself that during our break, she took some time to process things and really reflect on what was happening and what needed to change. Obviously, I still love her, and during that time, I too did a lot of reflecting on how things could have been different and what I could have done, and so on. She didn't give up on me, and I didn't want to give up on her, as she's still fighting for us. I felt we grew stronger during our time apart, especially her. The fact that she initiated our meeting and came to me makes me think that she really thought things through and was really sincere about everything she said. So, after our conversation, I suggested we should sleep on this and meet up for lunch the next day. After lunch, I told her I didn't want to be with anyone else and that I never thought about being with anyone else. She said she felt the same. So we're going to give it another try, this time with boundaries set in place for her parents. And wow, that has been the longest 2 months of my life. I'm glad things worked out the way they did. But I wouldn't want to go through this again. It was hell. It's then been a little more than a month since we gave it another go, and I'm sorry to say that nothing had really changed. In fact, things got worse. The first couple of days started out fine, and I thought things were going good. But then she started bringing up how I should just go and apologize to her parents and make them happy so we can settle this. I told her that I didn't do anything wrong and that I thought we had already established a clear understanding of our boundaries and our stance as a couple. Then the whole conversation went south. Since I didn't want to give in and apologize for something I shouldn't have to, she gave me the cold shoulder, and we had a communication breakdown. I was already stressed out with work, as it is, and the drama her parents, and partially she, had caused me for the last 4 months, was really putting a strain on my physical and emotional health. So we decided it was best to part ways. Honestly, I don't really understand why she put in the effort to convince me to give our relationship another try in the first place if her plan was to force me to apologize to her parents. I don't understand how she thought that would somehow solve everything. Well, it's a good thing I was hitting the gym, or else I would have been going crazy. But my new life starts now, and this time I don't have to worry about the what ifs. Anyway, I just needed some moral support. So, your input would be greatly appreciated.